Hi, welcome to this masterclass on perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. I'm Doc Edwards, and I have my friend Shannon here that I'm so excited to finally get to do a class with. Shannon was introduced to me. I think was it like 2015? Is that how long it's been now? Seems like
Um, I think I met you first when I was pregnant with my first son, so like 2011.
oh man, that's right.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It was like 10 years, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're so the we had an organization here in Southwest Florida called the Southwest Florida Birth Network, and both very active in that, are really committed to helping out with moms, and where she changed my life quite literally, like this changed the entire arc of my career, was that there was a documentary screening called Dark Side of the Full Moon. And Shannon, I gotta tell you, like this story gets every single chiropractor who's ever around the world who's attended my seminars gets to hear this story about how impactful this was for me. I sat there in the documentary, and it was lifting the veil on perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. It gave some really just, I mean, for me, they were bone chilling statistics about 1 in 7 mothers end up with a form of this, and it can manifest in a lot of ways that we're going to talk about today. But as I sat there in the audience, like I got really emotional because there is an instrument that we use in our practice that was developed by the National Institute of Health. It's called the Promise 29, and it's basically designed to measure quality of life. And as a researcher for the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, I was asked to pilot a study on this with my pregnant patients. So I had my patients filling out this tool for years at this point in time. And I would look at it every once in a while, but I didn't really know how to score it. So I would just kind of sent it back to our research director, let him deal with it, I guess was kind of my mentality at the time. And when I saw the statistics on how many moms are impacted by this, um, I did the quick math in my head and realized that every single month I had mothers coming in with this, and I wasn't checking it. I wasn't catching it. It wasn't that it wasn't there. It was that I wasn't doing the job that a provider needs to be able to do to be able to see it. And like that resonated with me in such a massive way that I went home and I wrote a really big post on Facebook and just apologized to our community. And that was one of the best things I could have ever done, because I had all these moms coming out of the woodwork thanking me for my, openness with this and talking to me about how they had been feeling. And it made a depth of commitment inside of me to be able to understand this better. And so we have a lot of tools available to us as kind of a natural health community. And one of the things that then several years after that I was able to take part in was a really good neurology series that helped introduce me to he's a psychiatrist. His name is Dr. Amen, and he has these brain imaging centers all over the U.S. He has a really interesting way of looking at the brain and how certain areas of the brain are working and certain areas aren't. And when I was introduced to his work, I really looked at things like anxiety and depression and looked at how that was influenced by the uptake of the glucose. And I saw this pathway for me as a chiropractor to be able to screen for areas of the brain that weren't working well and potentially help them work better. And so the ways that like it literally started this whole section of research within the chiropractic profession. Like you inviting me to this documentary is literally changing the course of chiropractic. And I was just in Savannah, Georgia, teaching other chiropractors about this last weekend. So they all got to see the documentary, and I hope they're as drooly about this as me. So I'd like, if you can, go ahead and let everybody know, Shannon, what is it that you do professionally, and I would love to hear your story about why you got into this area of work.
Okay, sure. So my official title is a licensed mental health counselor. And my specific area of specialty is maternal mental health. So That's really an umbrella term that encompasses so much. And as far as the clients that I see and what their issues are. So I primarily work with women who are having um, some form of perinatal depression or anxiety. Um, the but I also see clients who are struggling with fertility difficulties, and also women and parents who have had birth trauma, traumatic event during, either the pregnancy or the birth or during postpartum, and then of course also families who have suffered loss through miscarriage, stillbirth. And so that term maternal mental health is really a casting a wide net over lots of different issues and things that families go through. And then when we talk about what we're talking about today, PMADs, that's an acronym for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And that term kind of replaces the I guess we could say misleading term of postpartum depression. That is what most people are a term that most people are familiar with, but it's misleading in the sense that for a lot of women, it issues don't always start during the postpartum phase. For a lot of women, they can start having symptoms during pregnancy and within that first postpartum year. So it's quite a long period of time. It's not just the first weeks after baby is born. So we needed to change that to a more encompassing term, and that's perinatal and perinatal period. The other thing is that for a lot of women, it doesn't always look like depression. It can manifest as more anxiety symptoms. For some, it can manifest as intrusive, scary thoughts, and for a smaller number of women, it can actually um, come out in other ways, PTSD, and even psychosis. So there's lots of different disorders or sets of symptoms that can manifest during this period. So that's why a long story of why it was retermed PMADs, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
Great. And as you were, going through school to be a counselor and you're thinking about what you wanted to do, what was it about helping women, helping mothers that really called to you? Why did you decide to do this?
Okay, so well, I was actually working as a therapist, had been through school, um, and had been working in a different number of settings. I worked with kids, troubled youth for a long time. Um, I did uh, some time working in a inpatient psychiatric hospital. I've done several different things in my career, but it wasn't until I had my own uh, child, my first son, and went through what I didn't know at the time was postpartum anxiety after he was born. And for me, I was having all of these symptoms that didn't fit postpartum depression. And that's the only thing I really had ever heard of at that point in time. So, I'm, having panic attacks and can't sleep at night, lying awake, making sure that, watching him sleep, making sure that he's breathing, um, having all kinds of just awful anxiety symptoms. But I just thought that maybe that was like normal motherhood. Like, okay, I guess
That's
this
that,
is
that
what it's
that's
like.
just what everybody does, right? Yeah.
Right. So I, sadly, I thought that was normal. I just kind of fought through it on my own for a while, doing my own research. And remember, I was already a therapist for many years at this point in time. And I, came across, I can't remember, maybe a book. I came across something that uh, introduced me to postpartum anxiety. And I was reading through and just was blown away because it was, my brain written on this page. And I was just shocked that I, could be a therapist and not know that this existed. And that was really the point where I decided to devote my career and my life to helping other moms who are going through that and you know don't know what it is or are too afraid to tell anybody what they're feeling, afraid that someone will say they're crazy and lock them up and take their children away, or just feel like they're the only ones who I remember, and every mom that I've ever seen says the same thing. I feel like I'm the only person who's ever had these thoughts or who's ever felt this way. And you know you're not there. This is a very common thing that happens to a lot of women, but the problem is that people don't talk about it. So when you're going through it yourself, you can oftentimes feel like you're the only one, you're alone. So that's the story of how I got into it and how I ended up where I am today.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, that's as you were talking about, these personal things, of motherhood and being open with that and going through the journey of saying, hey, I'm a professional. I should be able to deal with this. There are some things in there too that, as a father, because as we look at the research here, this can impact dads too.
Yep.
My son Forrest birth, he was a belly birth after 47 hours of labor, and here's the guy who was teaching pregnancy to all these chiropractors around the state of Florida, and everything I knew how to do, I couldn't get my own kid out. I felt like a massive failure. And
Yeah.
I went through depression with that too. And there
Yeah.
weren't a lot of guys sitting around talking about, their own PTSD experience and how that might influence your subsequent relationship with birth.
Yeah.
Um, so it's
Absolutely.
yeah,
that
there are these.
that's that's so, I want to say something about fathers, because a lot of times when you'll hear me talk, I talk about mothers, and I talk about women, and I don't mean to do that. That's just kind of um the primarily the clients that I see. However, this, if this is something that's not really talked about for mothers, imagine how little it's talked about with for fathers. And they experience a lot of the same things too. And men and fathers can have postpartum anxiety and depression as well. Absolutely. So it's not it's really a family thing. It's not just something that affects just the mom.
Yeah, we have these 2 million-year-old brains, right? And they're wired for protection and to hope everything goes well. And then we're confronted with situations. I think over this last year, a lot of things,
Oh, yeah.
those plans just kind of got tossed out a window. And what I was curious about for you in your line of work as a therapist was, have you seen at least more awareness of this? Have you seen more cases than you're usually seeing in your average year? How has this last year
Mhm.
impacted your practice?
Oh, well, gosh, that's a good question, and one I get often. Um, I think in general, I don't know anybody who's doing really well over the past year and a and quite certainly, my pregnant and postpartum moms, I think especially, are having a hard time in a lot of different ways, because of the isolation. I can't tell you how many moms I've had over the past year who have been like, oh my gosh, I'm having this baby, but I don't know if I should have, my relatives come in and meet the baby. Um, I don't know what to do. Is it safe? I want my mother to come from Michigan, but we're worried about her, you know, flying on the plane and traveling. And what if she, catches the virus and comes here and the baby? It's just a mess. And a lot of families have been going through that over this past year and a half. And I think another thing is too is, the all the milestones that you have that people have had to miss out on, like baby showers and just things that are a rite of passage, I guess, in that during that time that people look forward to. And those things have been affected or ruined by the pandemic. And it's very sad, and I think very isolating, lonely. I mean, you name it. It's been a hard year and a half, for everybody, but definitely my clients as well.
So if you were going to give somebody a tool, like things that they could do, steps that they could take that would be proactive, to help at least the first step, right? To help resolve some of this. Maybe that might be understanding the symptoms, understanding their thoughts, and then
Mhm.
where do they go from there?
Sure. I mean, I think honestly, I think the first step is to tell somebody how you're feeling. Anybody, your mom, your partner, your best friend, just to be able to get that out of you and tell another person, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking. That in itself is so powerful, because when thoughts are swirling around in your own brain, sometimes it it can get a little complicated. You can um just get yourself into a not great place. So I think telling somebody and having that person, from an outsider's perspective, hopefully say, hey, maybe this is something that you could talk to a counselor about. Maybe this is something we should talk to your doctor about. Something, hopefully that person is supportive and encouraging to whatever it is that you're sharing, and can help point you in the right direction. I think that definitely is the first step. And then from there, looking into it some further, looking there's lots of books. I mean, definitely websites that you can look at. And if it seems like it's lining up that way, that what's going on with you is something that you're concerned about, then absolutely reaching out, letting your doctor know, getting in contact with a therapist. All those things can help.
Thank you. I have a couple questions that people have sent in to me, that I wanted to ask. Some of the kind of like clinical questions that you would know the answer to, hopefully. I wasn't really sure.
Hopefully.
If not, I think between the two of us, we got some good resources. And if you guys are also interested in asking questions during this masterclass, go ahead and pop them into the comments. Shannon's going to be live, able to respond to these. And if she's not able to get to it, she also will, at the end of the video, we'll have contact details for you to get in direct contact with her. The first question that I had was actually by another chiropractor who had experienced the initial wave after the baby's birth as something that she termed baby blues. And she said that was something that, just because of the hormonal change, that's something that everybody should be able to expect. She and I
Mhm.
kind of went, I just had questions for her about that. If she was relaying her experience as something that was common, or if that was something like normal physiology. With your understanding so far, because postpartum depression did like postpartum, at least in my world, postpartum depression has become such a strong identifying thing that most people can't hear the word postpartum and not fill in the word depression at the end of it. I've had to change my language to postnatal in order to keep people from thinking that all I do is deal with depression when I talk about postpartum care. So,
Yeah.
so when we're talking about the variations of what this might look like, in your experience, is some of that to be expected that we have some, down mood, or is that maybe a signal that we
Sure.
might look into?
Yeah. So what your friend is referring to is what we call the baby blues. This is something that most women experience. I think the number on it is 80% or greater of women go through what we call the baby blues, and it's really just a period of kind of unstable emotions, right? You can be like happy and laughing one minute, and the next minute you're uh, bawling your eyes out. Um,
Why am I
and that, yes, is very natural. It has to do with the hormones in your body just going through such a dramatic shift, and kind of recalibrating. And for most women, this can last a couple weeks. But if it lasts longer and symptoms are getting worse and not better, that's when we start to look at, is this a more diagnosable clinical issue of postpartum depression or anxiety?
Thank you. That was, yeah, I learned something. And as you're talking too, I think about the thing we discuss all the time, which is this pyramid of the neurology and the endocrine, the hormone system, the gut microbiome, and the immune system all kind of play together in this nice, to build a nice strong structure. And wow, what a change in the hormone system after birth.
Oh my gosh.
Women who have even the, they've heard that placental encapsulation is a good idea. They start to do it and then find that they start spiraling down and need to pull off of them. That's not the case for everybody, but it's something
Yep.
that you have a really big hormone rich, influx into your body already, that it might be something to at least be aware of.
Sure. And the thing about, with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, what the sad part is that this is something that has been around forever. I mean, since the beginning of time, women have been experiencing this, but it's only been in the last, few decades that we've really, put research into, or have identified and kind of studied it with research. But there's still a lot that we don't know, even though it has come a long way. We know that there's a huge hormonal component to it. Absolutely, that's a big piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole thing, because all women go through a similar hormonal change during pregnancy and postpartum, birth and postpartum. But some women seem to be like totally fine, and some women are not. So there's a lot of other things going on, not only in the body, but also externally as well, right? Like what is your other factors, as what's the status of your relationship with your partner? Are you having financial difficulties, social difficulties? I mean, there's so many other factors that are at play that it's really hard for us to say, okay, this woman will have postpartum depression and this woman won't. We can't, um, we can identify risk factors, but we can't like identify clearly who will have it and who won't, because it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate across race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. This is something that can affect anyone.
Yeah, that's actually been a big part of the work that we've been developing out of our office was better screening tools. Because what most of the birth community has is things like the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. We're in our office, we're publishing a correlation between the EPDS and the instrument that I talked to before, and finding high correlation between the two. And that's never, like, believe it or not, that's never been done before. Like, this is the instrument we've all been relying on. No one's correlated it to the NIH's instrument, which I think gets into a little bit more detail about things like that you mentioned: fatigue, satisfaction in the social role, quality of your sleep. All of those kinds of things are also influential in your capacity to deal with these. And the other thing that then from a physical standpoint that we're looking at is when the certain areas of the brain I was talking about earlier aren't functioning well, it actually changes muscle tone. It changes how someone's head carries. It changes how their pupils actually will even respond to light. Because if their brain is in a state of fight or flight, it's perceiving wolves. Even if you shine a light in there, it wants to keep the pupil big so it can see them all the time. So we're actually looking at some of these things and talk. It opens the door of conversation for my moms in their third trimester when we do this. I say, according to the research we're doing in our office, you may be, one of these 1 in 7 women. You do have some of these factors that we've looked at, just to keep you aware of it. And we're going to do what we can. But as you mentioned, Shannon, there are a lot of other influential things, including what happens with their birth. And that would kind of lead me to the next question with it too, which is the other big hormone shift I see a lot of moms go through, which is the end of the nursing relationship. That was the question that came in was, is part of the link, right? This window where this can impact women can, according to the majority of opinion, up to like a year in research, it can rear up. Some people, I'm saying, may suggest up to 2 years. One of the questions was, could that be also related to the change in hormones that happen when a mother stops nursing?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. This is another dramatic shift in hormones during that time. And it's also another complicated one, because for some women, uh, I have worked with, for some women, breastfeeding is a protective factor, and for some, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, some women, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but some women have an adverse reaction to producing breast milk and nursing. So again, it's so hard to know sometimes what the culprit was until looking back in hindsight. So for some women, they may feel better after they stop nursing, and some may feel worse. But definitely it's something. It's something significant that's happening in the body with the hormones at that time as well. And I always, when I have clients who are talking about the weaning process, I always encourage them to, no matter what, if they've decided that they're going to do that, do it long and slow. So to not end that abruptly because of the shift that it can cause in the body. And to just make sure that you're kind of tapering that in a way that will produce the most, or lead to the most gradual shifting in hormones.
Yeah, it seems like the body really does better with kind of like gradual change, right? It's
Yes.
a little bit better. We have some, have some time to shift things. I think you've been giving really, really solid advice for the people that are out there listening to this. So thank you. Hey, one of the things that I always like to ask people during these master classes is for success stories. Do you have somebody that you have in mind that came to you for help and is now through that journey?
Um, yeah, absolutely. Well, let me think. I just actually got an email from a former client not too long ago, and of course, I can't, as you know, I can't
Right, without
give
naming.
any identifying information. So I'll try to make sure that my stories are not specific or able to identify the client. Um, but I just received an email from a former client of mine who I treated a while ago for postpartum depression and anxiety, and she had written me this very lovely email saying, thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. I I couldn't have imagined that I would feel the way that I feel now coming out the other side. And her specific thing was, I can't imagine, she had a pretty severe traumatic birth
Mm.
and could not imagine having another baby at the point that she was in treatment with me. And we really worked through that, worked through her fears, worked through the PTSD, the resulting anxiety and depression. And she emailed me that she not only decided to have another baby after her healing journey, but was in fact pregnant again.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So um, I mean, I have lots of stories like that, but that's the first thing that comes to mind because I just heard from her yesterday. So
That's happy news. Oh, cool.
yes.
Hey, I got a
And
question.
those little nuggets of those moments, get it makes it all worth it. People ask how I'm able to do what I'm able to do every day, and hear some of the stories that I hear, and just work with all the sadness and the fear. And it's it's those stories. It's seeing my clients get better and make it through. And that just makes it all worth it.
For people who haven't been to a therapist or a counselor before, when you say work through, is it what's your role in this as a facilitator? Is it asking really good questions? Is it journaling? Is it what does that look like?
Well, there's lots of different therapeutic tools, and some may work, for some, and may not work for others. It's such an individual journey. So I definitely, teach clients lots of different tools, and they adopt the ones that work for them. But I think a bigger part is just the understanding that comes with being in therapy, having somebody, that you can tell your story to, and not feel judged, not feel um like you are weird or abnormal or crazy, and have that person tell you, no, I know exactly what this is, and this is what it is, and this is how we're going to treat it. And I think that in itself is such a huge moment for people, for therapy clients, to just feel heard and understood. And then they're able to understand themselves, what they're going through. And we identify, what is it that you need? Do you need more support from your partner? Do you need to heal something, from your own childhood, from your family? Or is it, a specific healing of the trauma that you experienced? It's all just so individual, and that is something that, when I do my first session after the assessment, we talk about, what are your goals? What
Mm.
would what do you want to get out of this? And of course, it's just so specific to each client. but that's kind of and of course the relationship between the therapist and the client has to be one of trust and understanding, and that's really crucial. You have to feel comfortable with your therapist. You have to feel like, okay, I can tell this person what's really going on, and I feel, confident that she can help me, or he. That's most important.
Wow, thank you. I really appreciate it. Shannon, how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in services or have some questions? I know Cindy Butler said she was going to be on as well. Postpartum Support International is an organization
Hmm.
that helps to support mothers. We don't have a lot of reps. We don't have a whole lot of resources here, and as I imagine that the things are kind of busy. But if they wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch?
So to get in touch with me directly, you can go to my website. It's just shannonwisely.com. ShannonWisley, .com, and you can find my email address, my phone number, and Doc, you can post those as well on the web page.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Um, I also, as you mentioned, I'm a professional member of PSI, that's Postpartum Support International. It's an amazing organization uh, that not only provides research and training, but it also has just lots of resources for clients or for families looking for local resources, looking for books, like anything that is related to PMADs is there you can find. We have a local volunteer organizer through PSI, Cynthia Butler, and her name and number is listed there as well, and she can point families in the right direction. It's just an amazing organization that I'm very proud to belong to.
I agree. I think they're doing such incredible work and really helping to raise awareness about something that's had some stigma to it. And as you said before, a lot of people think they're by themselves with this, and the first people to ever feel these feelings and some of these kind of weird thoughts. And
Yeah.
so to have someone that you can talk to, a safe place. That's why our Pathways group exists, is because we're all a collection of kind of weirdos that march to the beat of our own drummer, and to be able to have other people who get it and really you can be open with and honest with, and in a safe space. That's something that I think that we have as a mutual goal, is to help our families, right, in all the different
Yep.
ways. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to do this class with me. Again, if you guys have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to get in touch with either Shannon or myself, or Cynthia. And you're not alone in this. It's very common if you are experiencing it. And if it's not you, if it's somebody that's a friend of yours or a sister or your mom, it's worth reaching out and sharing this with them as well, because sometimes it just takes someone helping to light that candle for them and say, hey, you're not by yourself in this, and there's a lot of other people here to support you. So thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I would just like to add to that you really, as you mentioned, Doc, I think it's so important that if you have a friend or a neighbor or a sister or somebody close to you who is pregnant or has just had a baby, really, don't be afraid to really look her in the eyes and ask, how are you doing? Not, everybody, especially once the baby's born, all the attention turns to the baby. And, mom is just kind of like, okay, I'm still here, guys.
Mhm.
um,
Exactly.
so ask her, look her in the eyes and ask her, how are you? And don't let her get away with just a fine. how are you doing? I really want to know. That, I mean, it could literally save somebody's life to do that. So, um, it's so important. And also, you please feel free to reach out. I offer complimentary phone consultations, and if I can't help you for whatever reason, I can point you in the direction of somebody who can. um, you know uh, uh, so don't don't be afraid to reach out if you or somebody you love is going through this.
Excellent. Thank you guys again, and I look forward to do our next masterclass. We save these in an archive, so if you're interested in different aspects of the parenting journey, whether it's preconception care, pregnancy care, things to do with your baby, we had some really good ones on education, and we're here as kind of like your parenting conscious journey college to bring you the experts around here locally who really can help. So again, thank you for being one of those people in our community, Shannon. I really, really value you and appreciate you.
Thank you, Doc. I value and appreciate you too.